I see faces everywhere. Now, this is a rather interesting concept that is very psychological in nature. That's why I'm using the term pareidolia. And in a spiritual context, you could experience this kind of thing when you are working a ritual where you might see something that to your perception looks like a face. A lot of spiritual people, um, many that I've met, they talk about how they can see faces in different things, like in the trees and in the leaves and in reflections and shadows and other stuff. And the idea, and let me just pull up the little definition thingy here, is pareidolia. It's seeing familiar objects or patterns in otherwise random or unrelated objects or patterns. And it's a form of apophenia, which is a more general term for the human tendency to seek patterns in random information. So, you know, it's when you're looking at something and you can see something else within it, whether it be a face or a shape. It's even like when we look at clouds and we see, a bunny or a truck or a cat or whatever. Our brains are wired to seek out different things. Now, our brains, right, according to early psychologists, they form, if I'm using the term right, if I remember, it's I need caffeine, but we form schemas around things. So we know what a cat or a dog looks like because we know that they have four legs, a tail, and a head, right? We know what a vehicle is because it's got four tires, and then a cab. And then we differentiate within that schema with other kind of sub schemas as to the difference between a cat and a dog and a deer and a bunny and a truck and a car and a Winnebago and a crossover and an SUV and all that. So our brains are wired to look for these things because our brains are made to be efficient, use the least amount of energy possible. I mean, it runs on less electricity than a light bulb, right? So our brains are like trying to recognize things before actually taking a big analytical look at them, more doing it subconsciously than consciously. And that's why when we first look at something, we might see a face or a pattern or what have you when we look at clouds or reflection or this or that. And now, so that's the psychological explanation behind it. Your brain is wired to do that. Now, spiritually speaking, when you are working an invocation or something and you happen to see some kind of pattern in the shadows around your room or whatever because you only have like candles lit or what have you, or you're walking around in the woods and you happen to see something and you think it's like synchronicity that you see that kind of stuff. Should you trust that kind of thing? With a grain of salt, yes. You don't want to be too um, over analytical about it and too underanalytical, I don't know, about it. The big idea here is discernment about whether or not that pattern that you saw or that face that you saw, could that be an entity trying to communicate with you and communicate through your subconscious, because our subconscious is the antenna, and when you happen to look at something, it pulls at that information to communicate that there is a presence there. That's the theory, that's the idea behind it. But should you see every pattern or every sign or everything that you look at as being a confirmation behind what you are experiencing or hoping to seek out on the spiritual slash magical journey that you are embarking on every single day as you are trying to improve your spirituality and what have you? you know, Take it with a grain of salt. The idea is that not everything is significant. I'm going to quote Freud here. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes a cigar does not have to do with, you know, your interpretation of it as like whatever that symbolism is that you're attaching to it. The problem with our brains, we can, because we're pattern seeking creatures, when we are going about the world, our perception confirms what we are already thinking of. So if you go to a party thinking you're going to have a bad time, you're going to have a bad time. If you are in a ritual and you invoke a spirit, then you are predisposing your brain and seeking out a sign that that particular thing that you're invoking is going to be there. So then will your brain possibly interpret something that you see as being a face or a pattern that could be understood as a message or communication from the entity that you're invoking? Yes. But in, like I keep saying, you got to take it with a grain of salt. So just because you are seeing a certain pattern or something that is speaking to you, and tons of hippies will go out and be like, yo, that was synchronicity, man, I saw that, right? Not everything is going to be 100% of a confirmation, because your brain is already looking for ways in order to be right. Your brain wants to be right about what it thinks because it likes certainty, and it wants to confirm, yeah, what I'm thinking is this, and everything else around me is falling into that category. But when that's more the subconscious level. It's like printing out a report. Yes, yes, yes. And then when you start to analyze it and look at it more critically, then you could see, that was just a bunch of leaves or what have you. Now, should you overanalyze it and then, kind of squish your hopes and dreams all the time? No. But just because you are looking for something doesn't necessarily mean that every sign is going to be that. So discernment is very important with kind of unpacking what is really meaningful and what is not meaningful. Just because you think you see a pattern that's going to confirm what you were thinking, and therefore then you want to go down that train of thought that you were having at the time, doesn't necessarily mean that you should. Take a look at that train of thought and be like, is this really a good thing? That thing confirmed it, so I should look into it. So that's a good idea. Look into it and then analyze it. If I take this course of action, what is going to happen? A, B, and C. Be prepared for all that stuff. So spiritually, we can see a bunch of patterns and things that will confirm or give messages to us about what we are currently thinking and experiencing, but it is very important to unpack those analytically and not take everything like right off the bat. We need to understand what we are looking at and what those messages are, and then decide for ourselves whether or not to go along with those things, rather than just following it blindly because you happen to see something that confirmed your initial thought. Hopefully this made sense. Let me know down in the comments. You can always email me. Check out all my socials at the end of this video. And by the way, my courses on Udemy are kind of exploding right now. So I have links for those down in the description, or you can just do a general search for Magick with a K, and chances are you're going to find my stuff on there. So good hunting. Thanks for watching my video. So if you want to check out my playlists, I have, among others, the Simon Necronomicon, the Tree of Life, General Magic, Tulpamancy, a playlist on my books, the elements, stones, the theories that govern magic, and the gods and goddesses of Mesopotamia. If you want to check out my books on Amazon, I have Creating Consciousness, Magical Mechanics, Magical Theater, Handy Sigil Magic, Magical Movement, which is an update and expansion upon Handy Sigil Magic, Magical Mastery, which is a combination masterwork of Magical Theater and Magical Mechanics, and The Guide to the Spheres and Beyond. You can also find me on Facebook at Magickology YT. You can email me at priestofthenecro@gmail.com, and you can even check out my Instagram, which is Magickology. And good hunting.